Well, see what happens, kids, when you think you're just going to walk over a team. They end up scoring twice in the first period, and you almost forget how to score, and thankfully you do. But then you get stonewalled by a goaltender. Don't you love how this all happens, kids?
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another edition of Locked On Capitals. I am your host, as always, the insider of the insiders, Tyler Kuehl. Caps lose again. Hooray! Woo! Playoffs. Let's go. Let's get our buddy Jim Moore in here. Playoffs. That's right, kids. We're at the halfway mark of the season. Playoffs because, you have to win games to make the playoffs, and the Caps have been doing such a good job at winning games that we're questioning it. Thank goodness the Detroit Red Wings are playing hard against the Blackhawks. I don't know anymore. This is just not going the way we'd like it to go. So with that, the Washington Capitals lost. We'll talk about that game here in just a moment. We're also going to look and see how it affects the standings because I just cracked my middle finger when I tweeted on that one. When I tweaked on that one. See, that's how my problem is with Twitter. I'm on it so much that I put the word tweet into everything. Did I tell you I tweeted chicken for dinner tonight? That's right. I tweeted the chicken. I tweeted the chicken. Sorry, that was kind of funny. We'll talk about how the losses piling up here for the Caps have affected certainly their standings. And also, I'm going to give my take on the Aaron Dell hit that got him suspended 3 games on Drake Batherson. Like I said, we'll get to that later on in this edition of Locked On Caps. But let's talk about the game. Holy moly. Another slow start. Like, what is it about taking out teams? Like, do the Washington Capitals just not watch games against West Coast teams? Like, honestly, I know the Eastern bias thing is very hard and very prevalent, and I understand that. However, you understand that those teams are pretty good out there. And you know what? The Pacific Division is more competitive than the Metropolitan Division, at least between the teams that are out of the playoffs and the teams that are in right now. And we mentioned yesterday when we were talking about the game that the San Jose Sharks are a team that are battling for their playoff lives, that they were actually trailing. They were outside of a playoff spot as the Flames were winning hockey games and what have you. So I'm just going to say this right now. This is a team that, and of course, the Oilers won. They're trying to get back on the winning track. So that makes that division a little bit more tighter and that race for a wild card spot even crazier. But to my point, you need to find a way to realize that you got to meet that team, the team you're playing. You have to meet their intensity because the Sharks came out playing well in this one. They came out right off the hop. They knew what they had to do if they wanted to strike first on the road. And for them, this was a big game for them as early on in their West Coast trip, they had to come out and play hard and play fast. And the Caps didn't. They got outshot in the first period once again, and they got burned on a great play made by Brent Burns, a defensive zone breakdown where Garnet Hathaway, of all people, is the guy covering the front of the net. And I know that's a pass you shouldn't let through if you're playing the role of defenseman there, but you need to find a way to not allow your center, Garnet Hathaway, who's playing wing tonight, your winger being your last defenseman there. So Brent Burns, great play and all and everything. Sure, 100%. But the fact of the matter is that you left him open and then he makes a great feed to get Noah Gregor, backdoor, bang, bang. It's 1-0 in the first period. Ilya Samsonov is looking at himself saying, my first start in about 2 weeks here, guys. What I get the joke here. Can we play as a team now? Can we actually figure out defensively? I mean, what do you need to be figured out there in order to realize that was a very poor defensive breakdown here? You just fly the zone. Like, you get your defense. Where were the defensemen? I don't remember who the defensemen were. I don't want to know because unfortunately their names are not worth mentioning because my gosh, that was a horrible play. So we go to the second period. Caps now have not scored in 4 straight periods now. Trying to make sure I don't mess up their score here. Of course, you're right, because they beat the Capitals in overtime. So, yes, it's been 4 periods at this point. They haven't scored a goal. We go to the second period, and the game is still going. It's still tight. It's tight checking. It's not going well. And a few minutes in, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. I mean, a great play by Matt Nieto and Nicholas Milosh is able to fire one in, his first National Hockey League goal. Innocent looking rush. I don't know what Michael Kempney's doing on this play. I get it. Samsonov did challenge the shooter maybe a little too much. And as a former goaltender myself, you get a little excited and you kind of come out of your net just a little bit more than you usually would. But the fact of the matter is this: Kempney, know where your goaltender is, and Samsonov, know where your defenseman is. That's poor communication. That's, and nothing against Nicholas Milosh. I think he's, a solid guy that can be a good player going forward, maybe down the line in the National Hockey League. But that's an easy first goal. Let me tell you what, when you have two guys running into each other, it's 2-0 early on in the second period. However, the Caps started pulling something together. The Caps are getting chances. They're getting good looks. Boy, Connor Sheary's back door. He's tipping passes over top of the goal. They're getting close, though. They can't score out, though, after 20 minutes of play. We go to the third period. It's been 5 periods now for the Washington Capitals after getting shut out for the first time. Oh, guess what, kids? It's going to happen again. It's totally going to happen again that they're going to get shut out. But let's be honest here, because James Reimer, remember how I talked about him yesterday? James Reimer, who just makes me feel all warm and fuzzy on the inside. Great guy, beautiful teeth, couple beautiful kids, a nice wife, red-haired that looks like if you ever tried to tip it, it would look like a weird strawberry milkshake. Just decided to stonewall the Capitals in the third period. Now, granted, yes, Daniel Sprong did break the shutout 14 seconds into the third period after missing on a similar chance late in the second period. But that was it. James Reimer did the thing that I'm afraid that James Reimer is able to do against any team. I watched him in that run in 2013. I remember when James Reimer came into this league. I used to watch James Reimer because back in the day, the NHL Network used to broadcast the AHL on CBC. They'd have a game every Sunday, or a 4 o'clock, 2 o'clock game. And typically, since it's CBC and a lot of the folks work in Toronto, it'd be the Marlies at Ricoh Coliseum. Elliot Friedman, of all people. This is how long ago it was, kids. Elliot Friedman wasn't even on working on Hockey Night in Canada at the time. I think he was just a blogger and a writer for Sportsnet, but he would host those games for CBC. And occasionally he'd get on Hockey Night in Canada. He was more of a feature interview kind of guy, like a Christine Simpson that they have over there now. While Christine was still there too. But the fact was that there's this goaltender I keep seeing from Manitoba, James Reimer, or from Winnipeg, excuse me. I say from Manitoba because it's pretty close. But I kept seeing him again. This guy's gonna be a pretty good goaltender for the Leafs someday. And J.S. Shiger and Jonas Gustafsson were just not having a good year. And next thing you know, the Leafs are kind of tailing off. They have a decent team. They could be a competitive playoff team. They bring him in around New Year's and ends up stealing the show, brings him within a couple points of a playoff spot. And they think, man, this is the goaltender of the future right here for the Leafs. And by golly, 2011, 2012 starts off with a bang, and then he gets a concussion. Then he comes back in 2013, the lockout short in 2013 season, and just did this thing. I don't have a better way to describe it. He dragged that team. A team that was led by Nazem Kadri, Phil Kessel, Joffrey Lupul, but a defense core that had Dion Phaneuf, Mike Koska, Corbinian Holzer, I think, was there, Mark Frazier. Like the team was horrible. The defense core was horrible. They were getting brutally outshot all the time. And he somehow, some way found a way to win games. And that team made the playoffs. First time since 2004 they made the playoffs. Great 7-game series against Boston. The last 5.5 minutes of overtime, or the third period, then overtime, did not go the Leafs' way at all. I remember that all too well. But I'm like, man, this guy is something. And, the Dave Nonis, his decision was, here, what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to just, trade for a new goaltender because that's what we need because Reimer wasn't good enough. And that really kind of derailed his time with the Leafs. But watching this game took me back to that time when this cards were stacked, may have been stacked against the team that Reimer's on. But he just has this thing. Like, he's a good goaltender. We saw what he did the last couple of years in Carolina. And we've seen what he's done so far with San Jose. He's a great goaltender. But he just did this thing where he just was not going to get scored on. Come hell or high water. Daniel Sprong's goal is a screenshot. And the chances the Caps have on the power play. Well, they have, 2 chances in the third period, if I'm not mistaken, right? 2 power plays back-to-back as well. I mean, my gosh. Just 1 power play, excuse me. in the third period. But the fact of the matter was that my gosh, what a game he played, robbing Ovechkin time and again. Like Ovechkin, let me look at how many shots Ovechkin had. 8 shots on goal for the grade 8. Did not score once. Like he was on fire. And I said Robin Leonard goalied the Caps, and guess what happened? The Caps got goalied again. This time they were able to score. Awesome. But they were not able to do anything more than the one goal, which is just insane because I love James to death. Like that's my thing. I have a love affair with James Reimer, and seeing him do that to the Caps, it's hard for me to get mad at the Caps not able to score. Defensive breakdowns aside, like that was horrendous. And then of course Ilya Samsonov gets buried, but after Timo Meier throws Ovechkin into him, thankfully he's able to continue. But literally, 30 seconds later, in comes Jonathan Dahlen with a chance, and he just beats him. And there's 9th of the season. That just does the game. Cogliano scores an empty netter. Game's over. Yeah, there was a fight at the end. Garnet Hathaway getting into it with Jonan Gajovic and Gajovic. Listen, it's a tough loss for the Caps. But once again, for the second game in a row, they got goalied. It happens. However, this is the first time, though, that the Washington Capitals have lost back-to-back games in regulation this year. So, yeah, tough spot, but I think they can find a way to come back around here. We're just going to have to wait and see see how they can pull it off. They got a big game coming up on Saturday against Dallas, which we'll talk about, obviously, on tomorrow's show. So, but before, though, we get to how this impacts the standings and whatnot, let us talk about BetOnline. That's right. BetOnline would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue our march to the playoffs and beyond. BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the sports wagering action for 2022. New year and new updated desktop and mobile website, and sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, do not wait. Take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. So now, how does this affect the Washington Capitals? How do the losses that are piling up? I mean, you can look at it. The Caps have now lost, 4 of their last 6 games. And yes, a couple of them one of them has been in overtime. The Boston Bruins game, of course, was 4-3 in regulation. Yes, they're keeping these games close. And I know 4-1 looks a little ominous, but the fact is that the Sharks scored 2 goals late when the Caps came pretty darn close to tying the game up regardless. So I really think that the Caps this game, I think in particular, was much better and much more appropriate compared to the first game. I just think that when you have 2 defensive breakdowns in this league, there's a chance that those 2 breakdowns will lead to the pucks going in the back of your net both times. And unfortunately, they ran into 2 good goaltenders back-to-back games. I'm not going to give them the Boston Bruins as a hot goaltender. I will give them the Matt Murray treatment because Matt Murray then gets a shutout like we talked about I mentioned against the Buffalo Sabres, which we will kind of mention here later on when we get to the Aaron Dell story. However, you know that this team just has more to give. And I mentioned, and we talked about it yesterday, we talked about it on Tuesday on Locked On NHL with Mike DiStefano. The East is pretty much decided, with maybe the possibility of the New York Islanders causing havoc. The Islanders, who have now won, I think, is it still 7 of the last 10 games, 15, 14, and 6 now. They are now 19 points back of the Washington Capitals. 9 games, though, in hand, which, yes, means 18 points if they were to win all those games, sure. But there's times for crazy stuff to happen for both the Capitals and the Islanders. And as the time I'm recording this, the Wings are they winning or are they losing right now? Let me just get that there. They're still losing to the Chicago Blackhawks in the third period, down 2 goals. So they may stick at 42 points for another day and actually fall below 500 for the first time in a very long time. I'm trying to remember the last time the Wings were down below 500. They've always kept staying at or above it, at least, whether it be overtime losses, shootout losses, what have you. The Caps, by the way, now, this was a crazy stat that I saw after the first period, after they were trailing 1-0. The Caps are now 3-2-5 in games that they trail after the first period. 3, 2, and 5. That just shows you, one, the Caps rarely trail after a first period. But when they do, they get points typically. Now, yes, the 5 that I mentioned is overtime and shootout losses, so that's not good. But I really think that they can turn it around. I just don't know what it'll be. I know we talked about Marc-Andre Fleury, but how can you blame Samsonov in this one? Honestly, he makes 25 saves. I think 26 saves, excuse me. I was counting the empty netter. He had 26 saves in this one. He got beat by the other goaltender. Sure, that happens. Welcome to the National Hockey League, where even though there are goaltenders that are pretty darn bad, there are goaltenders in there they're still, like, if you bring the worst NHL goaltender right now, take your pick on who the worst is. I don't want to say Michael Hauser, he's hardly played, but I mean, just take your pick and put him in the American League, put him in the ECHL. Best goalie in the league. Michael Leighton. Michael Leighton is a goaltender that has the most shutouts in American Hockey League history. And people think was an okay goaltender in the NHL. And he is an all-time record holder in minor league hockey, beating the great Johnny Bower. Because remember, one point, Johnny Bower was one of the greatest goaltenders to never play in the NHL because, well, the Cleveland Barons back in the day, the American League Cleveland Barons, used to pay up the wazoo. But that's another story for a different time. So, but I'm saying is, though, a goaltender might not be the thing that you need. I don't know what it is, though. I don't know what this team needs. It just needs consistency. Yes, I know Jensen's out for a while, and she's still out, and they haven't been able to have the full lineup in. Who cares? They were first in the league when Nicholas Backstrom was still on the shelf. Come on. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I don't have any excuses for this hockey club. This team needs to find a way to win, and I'm going to say this. As much as I would like to see them go after someone to maybe bring in another depth forward or bring in a defenseman, right now the answer is in that room, because we saw what they were doing to teams earlier this year when they were hammering the Rangers, hammering the Avalanche, hammering the Sharks. They had back-to-back shutouts against the Sharks and the Kings. Kings now are all of a sudden towards the top of the Pacific Division. They were beating up the Canes. They were hammering teams easily, no questions asked. Fucale's getting shutouts. Samsonov, Vanacek, they're all getting big wins, great performances. Ovi scoring at will. This team can do it. But once again, they're regressing to the mean. And unfortunately, that means them battling for a playoff spot, battling to see which division they end up playing in, because in a wild card spot, you can go in the first, you can go in the second. As of right now, since they're in the first wild card spot, for now, 5 points ahead of Boston after the loss tonight, they would stick in the Metropolitan Division. They are still only 3 points back of the Carolina Hurricanes. However, the Hurricanes have 5 games in hand. They're 4 points back of the Penguins. Pens have 2 games in hand. 5 points back of the Rangers. Rangers have a game in hand. The Capitals need to start winning hockey games, because the other teams that are with the games less than them, they're going to either keep their distance or possibly catch up. Now, the Detroit Red Wings, they have 42 games, so there's not a whole lot, and obviously a lot of points in between there. But I'm just saying, you keep losing games, and the Islanders keep winning games, that gap will shrink. And all of a sudden, you're finding yourself fighting for your playoff lives. That is why I say you have to worry about these losses, the 9 overtime shootout losses, the lackluster, the mind lapses defensively, and the inability to start games on time. You need to figure those out now if you want to be successful and play into spring and possibly summer. So we'll just have to wait and see. Like I said, we'll talk about that game tomorrow against the Dallas Stars, because that's a great opportunity for the Caps to get a win. Thought this was as well against the San Jose Sharks, but ifs and buts for Kenny Nuts would all have a Merry Christmas. Am I right? So now, as we usually do, let's look at the games that are on tap for this Thursday night. We have a couple of good ones. The Anaheim Ducks, who were playing the Toronto Maple Leafs at the time of this recording, they were trailing in the third period. Knock on wood for my Leafs fans out there. They're staying in Canada, though. They're taking on the Montreal Canadiens, 7 o'clock. The Ottawa Senators, without Drake Batherson, we'll get to that here in just a second, taking on the Carolina Hurricanes, hosting the Hurricanes. This could obviously be a very different team. Of course, Matthew Tkachuk Brady Tkachuk being picked in as the all-star now for the Senators as a result, with Drake Batherson being out. Like I said, we'll touch on that here in just a moment to wrap things up here today. The New Jersey Devils going down to Tampa to take on the Lightning. It's also 7 o'clock puck drop. The other Florida team, the Panthers, hosting the Vegas Golden Knights. The Golden Knights making their way through the East right now. The New York Islanders hosting the LA Kings, one of the hottest teams, like I mentioned, in the Metro. They're right there. The Seattle Kraken are going to Pittsburgh to take on the Penguins. The Columbus Blue Jackets hosting the New York Rangers after taking on the Calgary Flames. And the Flames are on the road as well, staying on the road, taking on the St. Louis Blues. That's an 8 o'clock puck drop. The last 2 games of the night out west in Manitoba, the Jets hosting the Canucks at 8 o'clock. And at 9 o'clock, the Oilers and the Preds at a very interesting matchup. Those are the games on tap for Thursday. So now let's kind of look at the story. I want to end this one here because I'm a former goaltender and a very hard critic of the NHL Department of Player Safety, because I am 100% honest with you guys. George Peros and I, if we ever got put in the same room together, there would be there would be discussions. So the first thing I say in all this is, once again, remember, I'm a goaltender, card carrying member of the goaltending union. Buffalo Sabres got shelled 5-0 the other night. Was Wednesday night? No, Tuesday night. And they got shelled by the Ottawa Senators 5-0 in Ottawa. Huge, big win for the Sens. And I jokingly tweeted out and I said, hey guys, are the Ottawa Senators doing that thing last year where they kind of just stink for the first third of the year and then just turn it on late and look like a playoff team towards the end, being spoilers as well? Because that's what the Sens were in the North Division last year. But anyways, play that happens. Oh, gosh, this was a freaky deaky play. So Aaron Dell, he's done this before. He hit Mark Stone, or hit one of the Nashville Predators a few weeks ago. Came out of his net, hit him, Billy Smith style, if you will. And the game against the Sens, I think it was the second period, if I'm not mistaken, leaves the puck for his defenseman and is going to set a pick for Drake Batherson. Puts his shoulder right into him. Batherson goes flailing awkwardly into the boards, ends up injuring his leg, or his ankle was the official term. We actually got an actual body part on this one. It did not look good, because anytime a player goes into the end boards feet first, it's not pretty. And I've actually slid into the boards feet first, like playing shinny, when I'm going maybe 5 miles an hour. And even that's uncomfortable, let alone a guy going full speed trying to chase down a defenseman to try to get a turnover. So Batherson gets hurt. He's out for who knows how long. And Aaron Dell actually got suspended for the hit, because the goaltender typically never gets called for a hit. Dell's the first time he hit a guy earlier on this season, he didn't get called for it. This one, though, he did get an interference call. Batherson, though, according to DJ Smith, from what we heard after the game, could be out long term. And this is obviously, it's tough for the Senators because Drake Batherson's having a great year. And if you're looking at it from the side of Buffalo Sabres, you're losing Aaron Dell for a team that only has Michael Hauser signed to an NHL contract. That's not good. But here's my take on the hit, okay? Aaron Dell was doing something a lot of goaltenders, some goaltenders don't do. They kind of just stand there and maybe just play as the decoy. But he's done something that a lot of us have done. Throw a little bit of a shoulder out, a little bit of an arm out, nothing too crazy, and get in the way of the oncoming forechecker. Well, this time it actually hurt someone. The first time it was just a big hit, collision. Everyone's kind of okay. A few players may have had words for him, but this time it actually hurt somebody. And that's why this is, once again, the Department of Player Safety and I are not good friends here. I get that. But the fact of the matter is that he was unable to avoid getting suspended because he hurt somebody. When you hurt someone on a hit, even if it's not called, even if it is called, the odds are is that if he's injured, has to leave the game, or is out for long term, there's going to be a suspension or at least repercussions involved for that player. Would I have done that same maneuver, knowing what it's at risk? Absolutely, because I've actually done that to a guy before. He didn't snap it, he didn't break his ankle, but I've literally had a time where a guy was coming down trying to get my defenseman. I put the arm out and he went flailing into the end boards. Thankfully, he was able to bounce back up because I don't think he went feet first. And it was a game against Midland years ago. And I just remember doing that to a guy, and it looked funny on video because he went kind of, once again, flailing into the boards and a goaltender hitting a guy. I mean, this was, I think we were playing midget at the time, and people thought it was, kind of childish, but kind of funny too that Tyler, the goalie, hit someone. And listen, I do it. I've hit people, and I remember I had this conversation on Tuesday's edition of Locked On NHL with Mike DiStefano. I say with the trapezoid being there, that if you are outside the trapezoid in the corners of the goaltender or out past the hash marks trying to play the puck, you should be fair game. Now, once again, this play happened in the trapezoid, so yes, Aaron Dell would not have been fair game. I understand that. But that's why I just say, I'm like, if goaltenders want to be around to hit people, and I know the NHLPA will probably not agree to this, but I've always thought of the idea is that if you want to see someone, if you want to be a goaltender, you want to be involved in a play like that, and you want to be physical, you want to be Ronnie Hextall, you want to be Billy Smith, and dare I say you want to be under 6 foot Aaron Dell, well, okay, then you're going to have to be able to receive it as well. So it's just something to think about. And obviously I feel for Drake Batherson because he's a great player. I think he's going to have something, and that Sens team is going to come around eventually, and watch out. And Batherson's going to be one of those key players as well to go along with that. So that is it for this edition of Locked On Capitals, everyone. Thank you all very much for listening and watching this edition of Locked On Capitals today and every day. We're back tomorrow and getting ready for the Dallas Stars matchup on Saturday, and maybe a little crossover. Might be, maybe. We'll just have to wait and see. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, guys, at Locked On Caps. Be sure to check me out at TJKU29 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. That's right, TikTok. I'm there. I'm square. Whatever you want to call me, that's where I'm at as well. We'll see you guys all tomorrow here on another edition of Locked On Caps. Have a good rest of your day.